100 years ago, the first service was held in London to honour those killed and wounded in World War I. Today, Australians will pause in a moment of silence at 11 a.m. to do the same. Let's go live to Australia's largest garrison city of Townsville. Our reporter Annalise Nielsen there, Patrick Murrell in Melbourne. Annalise, first to you. There's a renewed focus on Remembrance Day by young veterans in particular.
There is indeed, Kieran. We've been on the ground here in Townsville for a few days, as you say, the largest garrison city in the country, looking at the issues facing young veterans in the lead up to Remembrance Day. Today is the day to pause and recognise those who've died in service and also those who've come back wounded. And it's something where it did start for World War I. As you mentioned, the first service was held in 1919, but it continues to this day because people do want to pause and reflect on what the sacrifice has been made. Now, we know that those older veterans are unfortunately passing away, but the younger veterans, many are still here facing those wounds of war, including those mental wounds, and that's what we've been speaking to a number of veterans about here, about how we can help them in everyday life. But a number of the veterans we've spoken to have said that they are glad there is this increased focus on Remembrance Day, not just Anzac Day, because it is another chance to remember the sacrifices that have been made and to remember those that they've lost as well.
It has to, first and foremost, and it's nearly every day it's been. Days like Remembrance Day, I'm glad it's been given a little bit more significance because it is significant to us and our community. People like Matthew Lambert, people like Nate Gallagher that did their bit, or everyone that went before us that forged this Anzac and Australian defence culture.
You're obviously going to remember first and foremost your closest mates that you've lost, so that's always going to be on your mind when you turn up to those occasions. But I think it'd be a really sad thing for any veteran, and it'd be really sad for any Australian to let history pass, or time pass in the history of this be forgotten.
So, Kieran, those are just two of the veterans we've spoken to about who they're remembering today. The service will start here local time at 10:30. Before that moment's silence at 11 a.m. when the guns fell silent on the Western Front. There's select services that will be happening right across the country to recognise those veterans who we've lost.
Annalise, appreciate it. Patrick Murrell is at the Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne. Pat, a small but dedicated crowd expected.
Kieran, 85 years ago, the Shrine of Remembrance here in Melbourne was dedicated, officially opened in front of a crowd of 300,000 Victorians. Since then, numbers have waned, but every year a small and dedicated crowd of hundreds gathers here to pause for a moment's silence at 11 o'clock in honour of those who served in the First World War and in every conflict since. Of course, Australia was only a fledgling nation when the First World War broke out, but in 1918 alone on the Eastern Front, by the time the gun had fallen silent, 48,000 casualties had been suffered by the Australian forces. 12,000 had paid the ultimate price. In total, across that First World War, 330,000 Australians served overseas. 60,000 would never return home. The service here will commence shortly at 10 o'clock. The Shrine of Remembrance has been lit up in red in honour of Remembrance Day. There'll be a flyover by RAAF jets as well as a choir and pipes and drums before that moment of silence at 11 o'clock.